Welcome to Nobody Told Me.
I'm Laura Owens.
And I'm Jan Black.
And it is a great pleasure to welcome our guest on this episode, Inquire, who is a National Poetry Slam champion, award-winning poet, and multi-platinum songwriter who's gotten to work with Selena Gomez, Miley Cyrus, and many others.
Inquire was named to Oprah's SuperSoul 100 list of the world's most influential thought leaders. His new book of poems and stories is called Inquire Within. Inquire, we thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both for having me.
Tell us more about your background and how you came to take the name Inquire.
So, Inquire is short for In Question, and it was a nickname that was given to me when I was 15 years old, and it just kind of stuck. Originally, it was Inquiry because I asked so many questions about my environment, so my friends kind of pegged me that. And then it just, I guess, evolved into In Question. And it's really a philosophy that I have in my life, and definitely something that leads into the book that I just read, which is called Inquire Within.
Tell us more about your background.
I'm from Santa Monica, California. I was born and raised there to a single mother who was a school teacher. And, my dad wasn't around, and I didn't meet him until I was 15 for the first time. And when I was around that age, I fell in love with hip-hop and just started freestyling, and I loved the meditation aspect of it. I think it was my first form of meditation because it put me into the moment in a way that nothing else could. Because when you're freestyling, you're not thinking of anything else but the next rhyme and the next word. And I also think it was a way for me to express some of the pent-up stuff that I had no other outlet for. And then I just kind of continued on writing and freestyling. And when I was 19, I wound up in an open mic for poets in Los Angeles called the Poetry Lounge. And it's one of the biggest open mics in the country. They still get 350 people every single week that show up to hear people read poetry. And so I got up and I started doing my rapping a cappella, and I was completely hooked. And it wasn't until many years later that I actually defined myself as a poet. But that community changed my life. It changed the things that I wrote about and expanded my idea of what poetry could be.
How has sharing your own story and your own hardships, like you just mentioned, having an absent father, how has that helped you as a person to heal and to grow?
I mean, I think it's been necessary for me having awareness about some of the things that maybe were in the darker rooms in my mind. That would be one way to say it, And I think I wasn't comfortable discussing that with anybody. And I think there's really no judgment on a blank page. And so you have an ability through this particular genre to have an ownership over your story in a way that nothing else provided me at that point in my life. And so I think when you have an ownership over your story and you can get it out of your system in a different way, you have a different perspective on it. It doesn't feel like it's holding you down anymore. So I think writing has brought me empowerment in many ways.
And you've written about your father in your poetry. Would you share some of that with us?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I appreciate it. This first piece is called Father Time. I'm staring at the number, wondering if I should call. I can hear the tick-tock from the clock on the wall as it meshes with the thump-thump beat of my heart. Sometimes getting something started is the hardest part. I didn't meet my dad until I was 15. I had seen his photograph, but his image was sickening. A coward with a dick, but no balls to back it up. See, when he left me as a kid, I had cause for acting up. The funny thing about hate is the person you hate doesn't feel that hate. You feel that hate, but wait. The weight can be too much for a person to take, and personally I was hurt, so I just locked it away. I was angry all the time, and I didn't know why. I couldn't handle my own rage, so I would hide it inside. Pretending everything was fine became a daily pastime. Time passed, and I started to believe in my own lies. I took it out on my mom because she raised me alone. The rage that I couldn't own had left me totally numb. It was landmines in my mind that I didn't understand. So when the boy inside cried, the young man outside yelled. I think I learned about my masculinity from TV. The people weren't real, so I knew they couldn't leave me. I would sit there for hours right in front of the tube. The images that I saw were my depiction of truth. It was manhood in a box, and I bought into it. The censorship of anything inside of me that's sensitive. The sentence is a lifetime of tears, suppressed in a stone face and overblown ego they've distracted through a paper chase. Back when I was 9, I imagined in my mind that my father was a spy working for the FBI, and that's why he couldn't stop by right or drop a line. He was off saving our lives from the bad guys. But that was just a lie that I used to get by so that you wouldn't see the tears welling up in my eyes when you're rejected by the person that you're created by. You secretly feel like you don't have a right to your life. I thought if I confronted him, then it would make it all right. But since I couldn't forgive him, it just recycled my spite. I remember meeting him for the first time. Every time a person passed by, I would ask, Mom, is that him? I look a little like him, right? No? Oh. Well, what about that guy? And that was what it was like to meet the man that gave me life. To shake his hand and look into his eyes. We talked till he apologized, then said our goodbyes. I walked away on my own and I began to cry. Now, for years after that, I acted like it's all resolved. I had told him what I thought, so I figured problem solved. But it just re-evolved. My insecurities were eating at my mental health. I took it out on the world because I hated myself. That's when I finally decided I needed some help. I opened up. I started writing and sharing about my past. I got honest with myself and I started chipping at my mask. I looked into the mirror and confronted what I saw, accepting the reflection by embracing every flaw, then directing the connection into breaking down the walls by reflecting the perfection of the God inside us all. I stopped focusing on everything that I had been hateful for and started focusing on everything I could be grateful for. And personally, there is a lot that we can be thankful for. If pain is dragging you down, just cut the ankle cord. That's when the weight lifted and I really started living. It's when my hate shifted and I really started giving. It's when my fate twisted. It was like an ego exorcism. Your mind state can be the most powerful of prisons. My father never played catch with me or gave advice. But if nothing else, that man gave me my life. And that's enough for me, if that is all he can ever give. Because I'm appreciative for every day I get to live. And even though I don't need my dad to validate, I thought that I should write this poem to thank him for creating me. Because every moment that we are alive is like a gift. And if that's not enough to forgive, then what is? I'm staring at the number, wondering if I should call. I can hear the tick-tock from the clock on the wall as it meshes with the thump-thump beat of my heart. Sometimes getting something started is the hardest part. I pick the phone up. The dial tone begins to sing. I punch his number into it, and it begins to ring. Ring. Hello, Mike. Hey, man, it's Adam. Your son.
Wow.
What has that relationship with your dad evolved into today?
You know, that's an interesting question. I tend not to respond to that because there's so much in the poem that I share. But what I will say is that my father has since passed away. And we were able to connect and at the very least get to know each other as much as we could under the circumstances. And I'm certainly grateful for that. And I feel at peace with it, which is something that, for most of my life, I didn't feel that way. And, as I say in the poem, I mean, the hate that you carry around, the other person doesn't feel that hate. You do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so powerful.
Your life in all sorts of ways, so it comes out in every area,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How has writing about that helped you find some closure?
I think it's kind of what I said before. I think, these stories are trapped inside of us, and I think society in general is really afraid of our pain. We're so afraid of our pain that we constantly distract ourselves from it. And I think, culture and consumerism, it teaches us to go outside of ourselves to find the answers for that pain.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, I mean, if you can find enough silence and you can have a different perspective on that story, first of all, you realize no matter what the circumstances are, this is the human story. Whatever you've gone through, we can all relate to it. That's why art is interesting, because if people are truthful, it makes other people feel less alone, whether or not they've gone through that very thing. Just because they understand what it means to be human. So I think creating the art is one thing that allows you some perspective on that story, so it doesn't feel like it's holding me down anymore. And then I think sharing it and getting that mirror back from the people that I share it with, where they go, wow, thank you for sharing that. It connects me to a different part of myself and provides some healing in my life. And in that way, it's full circle.
We thank you so much for joining us on Nobody Told Me. And we have a question for you to think about. Is there something that interferes with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp Online Counseling is there for you.
BetterHelp allows you to connect with a professional counselor in a safe and private environment. Get help on your own time and at your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist.
BetterHelp has 3,000 licensed professional counselors in the U.S. who specialize in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, and trauma, anger, family conflicts, LGBT matters, grief, and self-esteem are just some of the issues you might want to discuss.
And of course, anything you share is completely confidential. And if you're not happy with your counselor for any reason, you can request a new one at any time at no additional charge.
BetterHelp is available worldwide, and you can start communicating by text, chat, phone, or video in under 24 hours. Financial aid is available for those who qualify.
It's secure, convenient, and professional. And best of all, it's a truly affordable option. Nobody Told Me listeners get 10% off their first month with discount code NOBODY.
So why not get started today? Go to betterhelp.com/nobody. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor you'll love.
That's betterhelp.com/nobody.
What suggestions do you have for people who are hearing you and are familiar with you and your work and say to themselves, you know what, that might really help me with my healing and I want to write my story, but I don't know how to find my inner voice? How can they find that?
Well, first of all, don't overthink your inner voice. I mean, your mind should definitely be in the car, but your heart should be in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
Choose something that is moving, meaningful, inspiring, annoying to you. And then if you give it enough time and space, when we're speaking about a poem, it will almost write itself. I think we get in our own way when we think it has to be a certain way. And so we judge the process and that changes the product. So, choose something that's moving to you, create some time and space, and then just allow it to come out. And then, share it with someone else because it allows you to be seen. And, when you're witnessed, the other person is witnessed as well.
What is the process of writing a poem like for you? I mean, does it just pour out in one sitting, or do you write things and then come back the next day and say, oh, I really don't like the way that reads or feels, and I want to change it?
I would say every single poem is different. The process is always different. But I would say it always starts with something that's true. And as long as I start with something that's true, there's a roadmap to get to the end of the poem. The poem has something that it wants to say. If I was to think of what I want to be inspired by, I would be over intellectualizing, inspiration. Mm-hmm. You can't, intellectualize inspiration. You can't even look for inspiration. You just have to pay attention to what you're actually inspired by. So, right. For me, it's all about paying attention to what it is that I'm inspired by. And then when I find that, following those breadcrumbs. And I would say for the book that I just wrote, Inquire Within, which I'm so excited about because I finally have a home for all of these poems that I've created over the years. It was interesting because it was the process of, writing some new pieces and stories, but also just collecting them together so that I could have this poetic, I would say, hero's journey. There's two sections in the book. It's inhale and it's exhale. And inhale is the personal stuff and, my story. And then exhale is social and political. So since I don't write from a strategy, I write from an inspiration, collecting all of these things and putting them into one place was fascinating because I actually got to see what I've been trying to say all of these years, when I put them all into one place. So it was really an unbelievably gratifying process, and I'm excited to share it with the world.
Yeah, and you get to see your own journey, and I'm curious to know whether or not you find that you only get inspired when times are tough, or if you can also find the desire to write and to be more inspired when things are going well. Because I know for myself, I always wrote songs. I love doing that. I write country songs and, really enjoy that process and writing a story. But when things were going well, I wasn't quite as inspired. And I feel like that's a pretty familiar thing to a lot of people.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. I would say a lot of my inspiration comes from the tougher times as well. But I would also say that I think that there's a myth for artists that we have to create those tougher times. Mm-hmm. A lot of people almost chase that misery so they'll have something to create from. And I think that's a complete illusion. The things that are going to be most painful to us will happen on a random Thursday. You don't need to create misery in your life to be able to look around you and see what's going on in the world and to feel the full gamut of human emotions and put that into your art. So I definitely pay attention when I'm in moods, and I try to channel that in a positive way. But the other thing that I realized at a certain point is if I only am writing from my misery and I don't alchemize it, I'm actually creating more of it for myself. Huh. And so I always try to find hope in my pieces for myself and for my audience because I don't just want to recreate that misery. So even if a piece is born from pain, I don't want it to stay in pain.
You read such a powerful poem just a minute ago about your father, and you've also written about motherhood. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you asking. So this piece is also in the book, and it's called Creation. And it's really special to do this for you guys because I would say it's really rare that you have a mother and daughter podcast team. And I think it says a lot about both of you that you're able to do something creative together at this high level and enjoy it and have fun and inspire others. So this is a fun poem for me to read to you guys specifically.
Great. Thank you.
It's called Creation, as I said. The highest form of creation. That's what we're witnessing. Two artists coming together to make a human being. Out of nothing into everything. Soon enough, she'll be crawling, grabbing, getting into everything, and you will teach her everything you know. And she will be your everything, and everyone will know. And they'll stop you on the street and comment everywhere you go about how beautiful she is. And you'll just nod in agreement at the miracle of it. You never really knew a love like this could exist. Total bliss. Little hands, little feet, little head. Look how little she is. And yet she has the universe inside of every fingerprint. Rocking back and forth, singing to her softly as you sit with your morning cup of coffee on an IV drip. Give her a gentle kiss, then watch her fall asleep on your chest and let her body rise and fall with every grateful deep breath. See, your heart is at rest. So even though your hair is a mess and you're sleepless, you have a purpose that is greater than your spouse or yourself or your job or your wealth or even your health. You'd sacrifice it all if it would help to give her heaven over hell, and that drives you to excel. There is no more option to fail. The wind is at your sails. And since everything is new to her, it's new to you too. What is this? What is that? Who are they? Peekaboo. It's the wonder and amazement of the daily things they learn to do, and every one of them you get to live vicariously through. First step, first word, first smile, first tooth. Shoot, she'll have you wrapped around her finger before she turns two. Out of nothing into everything. Soon enough, she'll be walking, talking, getting into everything, and she will teach you everything she knows. And she'll think that she knows everything, and she will tell you so. So even though you know she doesn't, you will give her the room to grow, but you will also give her boundaries so she knows how far to go. And no, occasionally you might even have to use the word no. Take away her privileges or, God forbid, her cell phone. And she'll argue because parents just don't understand. They never have and never will. She'll slam the door and test your will like you don't pay the effing bills. Hustle up her daily meals, carpool from school to sports practice field. She has some nerve to act this ill. That's when it hits you. This is how your parents used to feel. And you appreciate them for the first time for real. This won't be easy. Nothing worth it ever is. But the love will always outweigh the momentary stress. And when they're at their worst, you will learn to be your best. And when they're at their best, it will balloon inside your chest until it fills you up, impressed that you could ever be this blessed because you created art that's creating art with every breath. And if that's not God, our definition needs to switch. And if that's not rich, our definition needs to switch. And if that's not success, our definition needs to switch. Because honestly, this feeling is as good as it could ever get, out of nothing into everything. Soon enough, she'll be driving, dating, graduating, leaving, living, working, mating, getting into everything. Until eventually she's rocking an engagement ring. Then she'll get married and the cycle will begin again. You get to be a grandparent, but on the other end. And that is all life is. Our human trip is just a circle between birth and death. That's why, above all else, we need to celebrate the now because it's precious. Take a bunch of pictures, but experience the present. And make sure that you listen as a parent and a friend. Then again, that's just my advice. But I don't have kids.
Oh my God, that is so amazing. And as I was reading this along with you in the wonderful book, Inquire Within, and I was just thinking to myself, how does this guy understand this so well and not have kids of his own? How did you possibly tap into that?
Yeah. I mean, you captured it all.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. I mean, you know, sometimes you write from your truth and sometimes you write from your imagination, but you can tap into truth through your imagination. And, you know, so I just imagined what it would feel like. I wrote it specifically. There's a friend of mine named Omari Hardwick, who's an actor and incredible poet, and we came up in the poetry scene together. And his daughter was born, and so he asked me to perform at the baby shower. And you know, he's my brother, and we have so much love for each other. So when I sat down to write something, this was what came out. And I don't often have an opportunity to perform it. You know, I do public shows and corporate shows and you know, workshops for people who want to find their own voice. But, you know, this piece is very specific. And so, you know, when I knew I was going to be speaking with you both today, this was the first thing that came to mind.
You found my voice in that. You did, as a mom.
Thank you.
Oh, my God. I'm just amazed at how relatable that is. I mean, that's the gift that you have, is just being able to use these words that just bring a life situation alive in a performance like that. Oh my God.
You're obviously just so amazing at delivering these really powerful messages. And I'm wondering if you were just born with the ability to engage people or how you developed that. How can we all hone that into our daily lives?
I think, it's like anything else. People ask me, how do you do this, or how did this, take place? It's a bizarre thing to choose to be a poet for a living. It's a market that's still creating itself. So it took me a long time to figure out how I was going to pay the bills doing this, and maintain my artistic integrity, simultaneously. And I don't know. I mean, for me, the more you do something, the more you understand how you want to do it. There's a Miles Davis quote. And by the way, I'm saying that in every area of this genre, but in any genre. There's a Miles Davis quote that, I'm going to mess it up, but it's basically, it took me like a very long time to learn how to play by like myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just love that idea. And I feel the same thing about me. It took me a really, really long time, to be able to really, truly express my poems, through my authentic voice. And I think even now, I feel that I am the vehicle for these poems, but also the obstacle for them in the creation of them and in the sharing of them. So I need to kind of get out of the way in order for the poem to come through me, but it needs to come from my experience and my ideas. And then I have to kind of get out of the way to share them in an authentic way, because otherwise, I'm normal. I'm like anyone else. Of course I want to be validated or want to be successful or want you to like me. And so then I would be focusing on that rather than just focusing on what the poem wanted to say and the truth of how it was written.
Do you have time to share another poem with us, the one on change?
Yeah, absolutely. So this piece is called Change. Most people don't change. I mean, they won't change. I mean, they can change, but usually they can't seem to change. I find it so strange. People just continue to repeat the same patterns, like the consequences don't matter when they clearly do. What if God put a magnifying glass over you, over me, over everything we see? And this world is an experiment for your soul to survive separated from our infinite whole. I wouldn't know joy unless I knew pain. I'm looking for a new way to say the same old thing. They say the same old thing and then expect a different response. It's hard to explain. I guess the heart wants what it wants. I used to think I was right or wrong. Now I know I was wrong, so I write. Darkness is a form of light. I used to think I was mad at you. I was really mad at me, but in retrospect, that's how it had to be. I used to think I knew some shit. Now I know I don't know shit. But at least I know enough shit to know I don't know shit. Shit. I'm a hitchhiking ghost trying to find his way home. Every mistake that I make, I put inside of a poem. She wants to change her man, but she's focused on her man. She should focus on herself, rearrange her mental health. He wants to change his girl, but he's focused on his girl. He should focus on himself, rearrange his mental health. We want to change the world, but we're focused on the world. We should focus on ourselves. Why do I repeat myself? Everybody's superpower doubles as their kryptonite. I think too much to sleep at night, but that's what makes me rip the mic.
That's so good. That's so good. I understand why that was one of my mom's favorites.
Why do you say?
There's one part of it in particular that really gets at me, and it's when you say she wants to change her man, but she's focused on her man. She should focus on herself, rearrange her mental health. And I have gone through so many different issues related to depression and dating, and I've really just found that, focusing on myself, rearranging my own mental health has really made it so that everything's just kind of come together in terms of my own romantic life. And I don't know, it seems like something my mom would say. So I'm sure that's why she liked it so much.
No, I absolutely love your work. And I wish we had more time to share more of it. But we wanted to ask you one question that we ask everybody on the show. And as you know, the show is called Nobody Told Me. And we always ask our guests, what is your nobody told me lesson? What is it that nobody told you about life or poetry or being successful or whatever it might be, creativity? What is it that nobody told you that you kind of wish someone had?
Well, I write about this story in the book, but I was like coming out of my new therapist's office once, and sitting in the waiting room was my old therapist, and that's like a true story, And it was like awkward because I hadn't seen him in a few years, and so there was like pleasantries, and then there was like a pause, and I was like, "How you doing?" And he was like, "I'm good." He was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm good." And then there was another pause, and then it was like, "All right, man, take care." And I walked away, and I just was thinking, we are all going through this human shit together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that nobody really told me. I think the culture in general, it makes us look up to our heroes, like they're not even human, like they're demigods or something like that. And then we get mad at them. We resent them for not living up to our projections of them, And I think that when someone is a hero, and they're above you, then it's almost like the accomplishments that they've made are like, they're not inspiring to you. They're like discouraging, because you're like, oh, they're so much better than me. I could never do that. And the truth is, we shouldn't be looking up to people or looking down on people. We should be looking at people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's it, is that we're all going through this human shit together, and look at people, have compassion for their stories. And the people that inspire you, know that, they went through it too and are still going through it. That it's not a destination. It is a journey. And we're all on this journey together.
Oh, so beautiful. And you have so many more amazing works in the book. And I just had one more question about the book. Like you mentioned, it's split up into two sections, inhale and exhale. And I'm just wondering how you suggest that people read it. How can they get the most from it?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that. We really wrote it like when we sat down and tried to create everything. My manager, Kevin Heckmet, incredible human being. I bounced a lot of ideas off of him and the editors at Harper One. And we wanted to make an experience where somebody could sit down and they could read it from beginning to end in the first half and have a full conceptual through line, and then beginning to end in the second half and have a second conceptual through line, but that the whole thing would have this full arc that really leads people on this kind of like jagged, poetic hero's journey story, as I spoke about earlier. But then we also wanted people to be able to just pick it up and flip to a random page. So there's literally like 55 amazing illustrations. Like we have this guy from London, Musta Sharik, who came in and did these really beautiful illustrations that help to kind of deepen people's experience of the poetry as they're reading the book. So I would suggest that they read it from beginning to end, but know that it's meant to be consumed in whatever way calls to you. Because like anything else, when my audience is listening to my work, I don't want them to walk away with anything other than whatever it is that they need. So however you feel called to read the book, read it that way, but it certainly is meant to be read from beginning to end, and know that I put my heart and soul into it and that I'm so proud of it. And I appreciate you guys getting the word out, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you both today.
Wow. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. And how can people connect with you on social media and the internet?
Yeah, so you can buy the book at in-q.com, inquestion.com, in-q.com. And then any of the other social stuff is just INQ Life. I'm on Instagram more than anything else, and I'm on Facebook as well. And we've done these really interesting kind of prompts leading up to the book, where people are now writing their own poetry on my Facebook page, and we're getting sometimes 150 comments of people writing their own poems based on the prompts that we've created. And then we're also doing shows in Los Angeles and New York and San Francisco, and we'll have a longer tour in the fall. So there's a lot of ways that people can connect with me, and I hope that you guys reach out, take a picture, say that you bought the book. Comes out March 31st, and I'm just so stoked to give it away.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wonderful, wonderful poetry with us, and for letting us know about the book. And it'll be exciting for this to come out. We can't wait for our audience to read it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you both, really, from the bottom of my heart. When you're creating a platform like you're creating that inspires people, you never really know what the ripples are, but people are really influenced and impacted by what you're creating and putting out into the world, and I honor both of you.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. We are just such big fans, and we hope you'll come back again.
Absolutely. I would love to.
All right. Our thanks to InQ. Again, his new book is called Inquire Within. His website is in-q.com. I'm Jan Black.
And I'm Laura Owens.
You're listening to Nobody Told Me. Thank you so much for joining us.